श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। शारदा शारदाम्भोजवदना वदनाम्बुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं प्रियात्। वक्तारमासाद्ययमेव नित्या सरस्वती स्वार्थसमन्वितासीत्। निरस्तदुस्तर्ककलङ्कपङ्का नमामि तं शङ्करमर्चिताङ्घ्रिम्। शङ्कारूपेण मच्चित्तं पङ्कीकृतमभूद्यया किङ्करीयस्य सामाया शङ्कराचार्यमाश्रये। प्रह्लादवरदो देवो यो नृसिंहः परो हरिः नृसिंहोपासकं नित्यं तं नृसिंहगुरुं भजे। श्रीसच्चिदानन्दशिवाभिनव्य नृसिंहभारत्यभिधान्यतीन्द्रान् विद्यानिधीन् मन्त्रनिधीन् सदात्मनिष्ठान् भजे मानवशम्भुरूपान्। तदात्मध्याननिरतं वृषगेभ्यः पराङ्मुखं नौमि शास्त्रेषु निष्णातं चन्द्रशेखरभारतीम्। विवेकिनं महाप्रज्ञं धैर्योदार्यक्षमानिधिं तदाभिनवपूर्वं तं विद्यातीर्थगुरुं भजे। अज्ञानां जाह्नवीतीर्थं विद्यातीर्थं विवेकिनां सर्वेषां सुखदं तीर्थं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये। विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विदुशेखरभारतीम्। Om. So we were looking at verse number 27 of the Atma Bodha. Rajju sarpavadapanam jivam gyatva bhayam vahe naham jivah paramatmeti gyatam chemya virbhayo bhavet. So here we had looked at in the previous session how the concept of I consists of three elements. It consists of the original consciousness Chaitanya or Atma. It also consists of the Sukshma Shariram, the Sthula Shariram, the Karana Shariram, the bodies, which are essentially the reflecting media for consciousness. Just like a mirror is a reflecting medium for light, the bodies are reflecting media for consciousness. And in the reflection of that consciousness is called the Chidabhasa. And it is the Chidabhasa which is the knower. It is the Chidabhasa which is the doer. It is the Chidabhasa that is the transactor, it is the subject of all experiences. It is the experiencer, it is also the doer. And so what Shankaracharya is saying in this verse is that so long as one considers oneself to be the Chidabhasa, there will be the notion of insecurity. So long as one does not consider oneself to be Chaitanyam, the original consciousness, Udaram antaram kurute athatasya bhayam bhavati, says the Taittiriya Upanishad. So long as even there is a slight iota, in Tamil they say, even if there is a small difference between oneself and consciousness, the original consciousness, there will be bhayam. That's what he says. Rajju sarpavati atmanam jivam gyatva bhayam vahe. So long as one sees the rope snake instead of the rope, there will be fear. Similarly, so long as one considers oneself to be the jiva, here the word jiva means a reflected consciousness. The limited entity here is the reflected consciousness. The original consciousness has no limitations. The limitation of the mind has been taken to be the limitation of the reflection. And therefore, by identifying with the reflection, one says, oh, I am limited. And so long as that limitation, that identification exists, there will be insecurity, there will be fear. Bhayam vahe. Naham jivaha paramatma iti gyatva iti jnanam chete. If one knows that aham jivo naiva, I am not the jiva, I am not the limited being, rather I am the Paramatma. Once one has had that knowledge, that Atma Bodha, there is nirbhayam, there is fearlessness. Abhayam vai Janakaha praptosi, as Yagyavalkya says. And in the middle of his teaching, he says, oh Janaka, you have realized yourself, you are not a limited being at all. You have attained fearlessness. And that's what Shankaracharya is also saying here. This much we had seen in the previous session. Today we look at verse number 28. Atmavabhasayatyeko buddhadini indriyanyapi Deepo ghatadivat swatma jadaisthairnavabhasyate. So, in the previous verse, it was said that one must know the Atma in order to get freedom. So, the question then becomes, what is this? What is this knowledge of the Atma that we are talking about? Who is the knower of the Atma? If you say one has to know the Atma to get freedom, the natural question is, who is the knower of the Atma? So, if to know something, one needs that thing to be the object of knowledge. That's all we are. So far, that's what we understand. If I know English, English is the object of my knowledge. To know Rama, Rama is the object of my knowledge. Similarly, we think to know Atma, Atma is the object of knowledge. It's okay. So if there is an object of knowledge, every object, how does it become an object? It becomes an object to some subject. I know Rama, so Rama is my object, I am the subject. So similarly, if I have to know the Atma, Atma is the object, so who is the subject? Now Shankaracharya says, well, if you think that Anatma is the subject of knowledge, that is, the Anatma knows the Atma, you are mistaken. So what is Anatma? Broadly speaking, you can classify the Anatma into three. It is the world, it is the body, it is the mind. These are the three basic classifications of the Anatma. Yes, none of these three can be the subject of Atma Jnana. If Atma is the object of knowledge, these three, or any Anatma for that matter, can never be the subject. Why? Because they are inert, they are Jadam. The world, the body, and the Atma can never know the Atma because they are inert by themselves. In fact, it is the inert Anatma, the inert Prapancham, inert world, inert body, inert mind that are known by Atma. And why is that? Because Atma is the Chaitanyam, is the consciousness principle. It is Atma is Chedanam and Anatma is Achetanam. Therefore, the basic rule is that only a conscious entity can know the inert. So, the conscious entity can never be the object of knowledge. In fact, it is the Atma which knows, the conscious entity which knows the Anatma, the inert. That position can never be reversed. Which is why Shankaracharya says Atma can never become the object of knowledge at all. In fact, not just Shankaracharya, the Upanishad itself says Anyadeva tad viditat atho aviditat adhi. In the Kenopanishad, the teacher says Atma is neither the known nor is it the unknown. What does it mean? Every object of knowledge, everything that we think is known, can either be classified as something that I know. Similarly, things that I don't know are not the object of my knowledge. So, every object can either be something that I know or something that I don't know. Now, by saying that Anyadeva tad viditat, the Upanishad is saying Atma is not the object of knowledge. It is Anyat from viditat. All the things known, it is Anyat. It is different from the Anyat. Okay, does that mean that the Atma is not known? No, nor can you say that the Atma is not known. What does this not known, aviditat, mean here? It means neither is it the object of knowledge, nor is it an object that is unknown. If it is not an object that is known, nor is it an object that is unknown, what does it mean? It is not an object. That is what it means. Similarly, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the question is asked, Vigyataramare kena vijaniya? How can you know the Vigyata? How can you know the knower? That which is the subject can never be the object. So, Atma can never be the object of knowledge. And that's what he's saying. Atma avabhasayati. Atma illuminates what? Buddhyadini. It illuminates all the mind, the intellect, etc. And what else? Indriyani, the sense organs. Now, what about the world? The world is also understood. Just like the Atma illuminates the Buddhi, Indriya, etc., it also illuminates the Prapancha, it also illuminates the world. Okay, Atma knows the Anatma, we had said. You had also said Anatma cannot know the Atma. Now, why can't we say one Atma knows the other Atma? So, for example, in this world, I know you, you know me. So, I become the object of your knowledge, you become the object of my knowledge. Similarly, why can't we say one Atma is the object of another Atma? Shankaracharya says, no, 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 you can't do that. Why? Ekaha, Ekaha Atma. Atma is only one. And therefore, you cannot say one Atma knows the other Atma because there is no other Atma at all. There is only one. There is no other. That being the case, Atma cannot be known. Anatma cannot know the Atma. Atma cannot know the Atma. So, what does it mean? Atma cannot be known. So, and he gives an example. Deepo Ghatadivat. Like the lamp illuminates non-luminous objects. So, Ghataha is a generic example of non-luminous objects. So, in a dark room, if I have to know the pot, what do I need? I need a lamp. Okay. Now, to know that there is a lamp, can I use the pot to see the lamp? No. The non-luminous object cannot illuminate the luminous object. It's only the luminous object, luminous lamp that illuminates the non-luminous spot. Therefore, the uh, the Chaitanya principle is the one that illuminates the Jada, and the Jada cannot illuminate the Chaitanya. That's why he says, Swatma Taihi Jadaihi na avabhasyate. Atma is never illuminated by those inert body mind complexes. Then what about in deep meditation we experience the Atma, we say. Upanishad also says, Nedam Yadidam Upasate. That is, whatever you meditate upon as this, idam, iti, that is never the Atma. Because why? Even that is an object of experience, it is the object of knowledge. And anything which is the object of knowledge is automatically an Atma. It can never be the Atma. Those things can never illuminate the Atma. Atma cannot be illuminated. It can never become the object of knowledge. So this is the entire purport, the import of verse number 28. Let's look at the next one. Swabodhe nanya bodhe cha bodharupatayatmanaha nadipasthanya dipe cha yatha swatma prakashane. So in the previous verse, Shankaracharya had said, Atma cannot be known. So here he is saying, Atma need not be known. So what makes us say that something exists? To know something exists, what do we need? We need knowledge. Knowing something is the proof for something's existence, anything's existence. Therefore, knowledge is the precondition for existence. That is a generic point. That's something that we all know. Oh, in the previous verse, he said, Atma cannot be known. Therefore, does it mean that the Atma's existence is not established? Shankaracharya says, no. Atma's existence need not be proven at all. Why is that? Because Atma is the consciousness principle that is trying to prove the existence of everything. It is because of the Atma that I know something exists. Therefore, the fact that I know that something exists itself is the proof of Atma, because it is the Atma by which I know something exists. Thus, the fact that we know anything at all Also, the fact that we do not know certain things. I say I know this, I also say that I do not know this. That means what? I know that I do not know. I have knowledge of my ignorance. Similarly, I have knowledge of my knowledge. I know something, I know that I know something. How do I know that I know something? Because it is the Atma that is telling me I know it. Therefore, the fact that I know is evidence of the Atma's existence. Nothing else is required. It is self-evident. Let us say, everything in the universe requires us to prove its existence through cognition. However, Atma's existence does not require anything else to prove its existence, because the fact that I know is self-evidence of the Atma existence. The Atma is ever evident, always experienced in the notion aham, pratibodha viditam matam. In every knowledge, pratibodham, bodham prati, in every knowledge it is viditam, it is known. Why? It is known as the one that knows. So, in the previous verse we had said, Atma cannot be objectified. Here we are saying, Atma need not be objectified for us to know it, because it is ever known in and through every experience. Balyadishvapi, Jagradadishu tatha, Sarvasvavasthasvapi, Vyavrittasu anuvartamanam aham iti antasphurantam sada. In every changing experience, in every condition of the physical body, in every condition of the mind, in every state, whether it is waking, dream, deep sleep, there is one thing that is unchangingly present, because of which one is aware of the changing states. Vyavrittasu, that is, in the changing states, there is one anuvartamana, there is one persistent factor. What is that persistent factor? I am that persistent factor that is present. And this is what Shankaracharya had said in the Dakshinamurti Shloka. Therefore, one need not work for an objective experience of the Atma. One cannot work for the, that is because there is no objective experience of the Atma possible. Similarly, one need not work for the subjective experience of the Atma also, because that time the Atma, the Atma exists, is eternally known. There is no requirement for any effort on that part. There is no requirement for any knowledge or knowing process for that. This svabodhe anyabodhe cha nasti. The knowledge of one's own self, svabodhaha, there is no expectation for knowing something, for any other knowing process. No special knowing effort is required, is what Shankaracharya is saying, for knowing oneself. For knowing anything apart from oneself, some effort is required, some process is required. But to know that I am existent, I do not need any effort, no process is required. Why is that? Bodha rupatayatmana. Because the nature of the self is of consciousness. It is eternally known. It is known in every knowledge, every cognition it is known. And the example that he gives is an extension of the previous example. The previous example, it was to know the pot, I need the lamp. To know the lamp, I do not need the pot per se. The pot cannot illuminate the lamp. The lamp illuminates the pot, was the previous example. Here he is saying, one need not require another lamp to illuminate the lamp. Why? The light of the lamp itself is sufficient to know it. You don't need another light to illuminate the lamp. Na deepasya anyadeepecha swatma prakashane yatha. So, a lamp does not require another lamp to illuminate it. Similarly, consciousness does not require another consciousness to prove its existence. Its existence is self-evident. Nobody has a doubt that they exist, right? So the question may now ask, is this Chidabhasa is there Chaitanya is there. The reflected consciousness and the original consciousness. So, can the Chidabhasa illuminate Chaitanyam? A question is as absurd as saying there is the sun in the sky. Bright sun is there. That sun is being reflected in the pond. No, it's like saying to know the sun, you need the pond's the sun reflect the light from the reflected sun in the pond. It's like saying that. So the reflection is existent because of the original sun. To know the original sun, you don't need the reflection. The fact that the reflection exists itself is enough to know that the original exists. So the original's brightness is sufficient to know it. You do not need the brightness of the reflection to know the original. Similarly, one does not require the Chidabhasa to know Chaitanyam. Chaitanyam is self-evident. Okay. Now, there is a $1,000,000 question. If the Atma need not be known in the previous verse, and in the current verse, we have said Atma is need not be known. The previous verse we said Atma cannot be known. Okay, if Atma cannot be known, Atma need not be known, what is this Atma Bodha that we are doing? Atma Bodha is about knowing the Atma, no? So why do we have this big Shastra to study the Atma, to know the Atma? If Atma cannot be known, need not be known, what is the point of this Atma Bodha teaching? So that Shankaracharya says in the next verse, we will look. Nishidhya nikilopani neti neti vakyataha vidyaraikyam mahavakyair jivatma paramatmanoho. See, the answer to the question, if the Atma is already known, what is the point of studying the scriptures? The answer is, whenever we use the word I, the Atma in there is self-evident, yes. But along with the Atma, several other factors are being denoted and picked up by the word I. See, every pada has a padartha. Vagartha viva samprattau, vagartha pratipattage, jagatah pitarau vande, Parvati Parameshwarau. The relationship between word and its meaning cannot be broken. It is eternal. So, when you say the word I, unfortunately, because of an erroneous notion, there are several other meanings that are being automatically picked up by that word I. Nobody says the word I, no normal person says the word I thinking of Satchidananda Atma. They use, what do they use the word I for? They use it for the body, the physical body, yes. They use it for the mind. Sometimes people who have studied the Shastra, they use it for the Karana Sharira also. And along with this, they use it for the Chidabhasa. So, the Chidabhasa, the Karana Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, the Sthula Sharira, all of these are picked up along with the Atma when the word I is used. Now, like for example, when I show my hand like this and say, what do you see? Everybody will say, I see the hand. Huh? But there's also one more thing that nobody else says. Why is that? What is that thing? It's absolutely necessary for the hand to be there. To say that this hand is there, there's one thing which is necessary. What is that? Light. So not only do you see the hand, you see the light reflected on the hand also. The light is illuminating the hand, because of which we say the hand is there. Similarly, when we use the word I, we are predominantly referring to the body-mind complex, and we are referring to this limited being that is enclosed within this body-mind complex. And in reality, what that I is referring to is the Atma, which is all-pervading, which is the illuminator of the body-mind complex, which is the basis for the reflection of consciousness in the body-mind, because of which one is aware of the body-mind complex. And not only do we do that, we confuse the Atma for the Anatma, but we also take the Anatma's attributes as our own. So the limitation of the reflecting medium is actually the limitation of the physical body, the mind, etc. And therefore, the purpose of Shastra is to teach the student to separate the Atma from the Anatma in the notion I. The purpose of the Shastra is to reveal that the Atma is truly limitless, and what is being thought of as a limitation is really the limitation of the reflected medium. So it is not giving us a new knowledge of the Atma that we know already. Rather, it is negating the false identifications, it is negating the false limitations. And therefore, it is in that where we see the purpose of Shastra. Because Atma cannot be known, Atma need not be known, but despite the Atma being known, there is a erroneous mixing up of Atma and Anatma, and the purpose of Shastra is in negating what is not the Atma and removing that in the identification of I. That so there is no new experience of the Atma. It's only a new understanding. It's a change in the understanding. That's all. Not even a new understanding. It's a change in the understanding. And this is the central teaching which is available in all the Upanishads and which is specifically encapsulated in the Mahavakya. So what is Mahavakya? Mahavakya is Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Bodhaka Vakya. Any Upanishadic sentence which conveys the identity of the Jivatma and the Paramatma. So the Jivatma and the Paramatma are in reality not two different things. So what do we mean by that? And so before we come to that, let us look at what Shankaracharya is saying in this verse. He says, Mahavakyehi Jivatmanoho Paramatmanoho Aikyam Vidyat. Therefore, one ought to know the identity. Any seeker should know the identity of the Jivatma and the Paramatma through the Mahavakya Vichara. Now, what is Mahavakya? We said Jivatma Paramatma Aikya Bodhaka Vakya. Now, there are many, many such statements in the Veda, innumerable statements. However, we predominantly take 4 samples, one from each Veda, to convey that the entirety of the Upanishad is teaching that one teaching only, that Aikya of Jivatma and Paramatma. It does not mean that there are the 4 predominant ones that are taken, for one for each Veda. That does not mean that there are only 4 Mahavakyas. There are many Mahavakyas. So what are the 4 ones that we normally take? One from the Rig Veda, Prajnanam Brahma, from the Aitareya Upanishad of the Rig Veda. Then we take Aham Brahmasmi, which is the Mahavakya occurring in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad of the Yajurveda, Shukla Yajurveda. Then from the Samaveda we take Tattvamasi, the Chandogya Upanishad. And then from the Mandukya Upanishad, from the Atharva Veda, we take Ayamatma Brahma. So Shankaracharya says, may you perform an inquiry into the Mahavakya. May you inquire into the Mahavakya, and through that inquiry, may you know that is the identity. So how should one perform the inquiry? So the Jiva, as we have seen, consists of 5 components. Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, Chaitanyam, and Chidabhasa. This is reflected in the Chinmudra. The 3 Shariras, the Jiva Atma, the Paramatma, the Aikyam. So all these 5 together is the Jivatma. So Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, the physical body, the subtle body, the causal body, then Chaitanyam, which is the original consciousness, all pervading, and then Chidabhasa, the reflection of that consciousness in the 3 reflecting media. All these 5 together is the Jivatma. Now, only because of this Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, do we have the notion I am the knower. In the absence of the reflected medium, there is no knower. Even the original consciousness, really speaking, is not the knower. It is the reflected medium which is the knower. And what kind of the knower is the reflected consciousness? He's an alpagya. He has limited knowledge. And why is that? Because the reflecting medium is limited. It has its own flaws. It's also very small. It's a micro medium, and therefore the reflection is also micro. Just like you can have the reflection of the one sun in the vast sea, you can also have the reflection of the sun in a small puddle. Similarly, the reflection of the consciousness in a small mind is the micro reflection, micro chidabhasa. And because of the limitation of the reflecting medium, that reflected consciousness also has only limited knowledge. Similarly, that reflected consciousness has limited strength, limited capacity to achieve things. It's an alpagya, alpashaktiman. Now, Ishvara or Paramatma also is endowed with 5 components. What are they? Sthula Prapancha. This entire universe is his body. Sukshma Prapancha, Karana Prapancha. So the 3 macro shariras. So just like we have the 3 micro shariras for the Jivatma, the 3 macro shariras are for the Paramatma, Ishvara. Then there is the original consciousness. So the original consciousness that pervades every micro being also pervades the totality. So that original consciousness is present for Paramatma also. Similarly, just like the micro media have a micro reflection, the entirety, the Sthula Sukshma Karana Prapancha also has a reflection. And that is the Samashti Pratibimba Chaitanya. It is the macro reflected consciousness. And just like the micro Chidabhasa is the reason why the Jiva is the knower, the macro Chidabhasa is the reason why Paramatma or Ishvara also is the knower. Now, and the Jivatma is an Alpagya because the reflection is a micro reflection. Ishvara is Sarvagya, Sarva Shaktiman, because the reflection is a macro reflection. So, the difference between Jiva and Ishvara is not because of original consciousness. The difference is only because of reflected consciousness. And if we negate the differentiating factors between the Jiva and the Paramatma, what we get is the identity. So, how do we understand this identity of the Jivatma and the Paramatma? Not from the standpoint of the bodies, not from the standpoint of the reflection. Rather, it is from the standpoint of the original consciousness that Advaita and the Upanishads are talking about identity. So, where he says, Shankaracharya in this verse, Nishidhya Nikhilopadhini, by negating all the upadhis. And what is upadhi here? It is the differentiating factor. By negating all the differentiating factors from the Jivatma and the Paramatma. What are they? Negate these Sthula Sharira from the Jivatma, negate Sthula Prapancha from the Paramatma. Negate both. Then negate Sukshma Sharira from the Jivatma, negate Sukshma Prapancha from the Paramatma. Negate both. Then negate Karana Sharira from the Jivatma, negate Karana Sharira from the Paramatma, Karana Prapancha from the Paramatma. Negate both. Negate micro Chidabhasa from the Jivatma, negate macro Chidabhasa from the Paramatma. What is left? Don't say nothing. What is left is the original consciousness. And that is the same. There are no 2 original consciousness. There is only one. And that is the identity that we're talking about. So here we are not talking about the equality of the Jiva and the Ishvara. We are talking about the identity of the Jiva and the Ishvara. There are no 2 things, really speaking. So when we are negating it, we are not simply refusing it. It's not like saying, I'm going to hide something. No. We're saying those differences don't exist in reality. It is only a mithya projection. So, because it is mithya, it's being negated. And that's why Shankaracharya says, Neti Neti Vakyataha. Based on the Neti Neti Vakya from the Brihadaranya Upanishad. So it is neither, not this, na iti. And so what is it, why are there two netis? The first neti is negating all the differentiating characteristic attributes of the Jivatma. The second neti is negating all the differentiating attributes of the Paramatma. What is left is the one identical entity, the original consciousness. And that's what we see. Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atma Guhayam Nihitosthidento. It is smaller than the small, it is larger than the large. Meaning what? Negate the small, negate the large, negate all attributes. When all attributes are negated, what is left is the attributeless consciousness. The negation of the differentiating factors is what is referred to as neti. Therefore, when we say aham brahmasmi, that aham is not the shariratrayam, it is not the chidabhasa. When I say Brahma, it is not Ishvara. It is not Sthula Prapancha, Sukshma Prapancha, Karana Prapancha. It is not the macro Chidabhasa also. Rather, when we say Aham Brahmasmi, what we refer to is the Chaitanyam that is we reach by this Bhagatyaga Lakshana. This process that we talked about by negating the differentiating factors, you negate these different factors from the Tat, which is the Ishvara, you negate the differentiating factors from the Tvam, which is the Jiva, and what remains, this process is called Bhagatyaga Lakshana. What remains is the original consciousness. This process is called mahavakya vichara. And this mahavakya vichara one has to persistently, consistently keep doing through Shravanam and Mananam Nididhyasana. By consistently listening to these teachings, slowly the intellect starts acclimatizing to the teaching. Gradually this idea is grasped. And when a little bit of the idea is grasped, doubts will arise. When the idea is completely missed, no doubts are possible. When the idea is completely understood, no doubts are possible. It's only in the middle, when we understand a little bit, that all sorts of doubts start coming. And when those doubts come, they have to be resolved through manana, through inquiry, through logical analysis. And through several rounds of Shravanam and Mananam, the relevance of Mahavakya, the meaning of that Mahavakya is understood. Therefore, may you do that inquiry, says Adi Shankara Bhagavad. With that, we will bring this session to a conclusion and we will take up the next few verses in the next session. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti